Sold by her stepmother for cash, she came back to claim her destiny. In a dusty, cracked town called Eldridge, where water was scarce and hope even scarcer, a young girl named Lila lived a quiet, lonely life. The sun burned too hot, the ground felt too hard, and the people seemed too worn out to care. But Lila was different. She had a soft smile, kind eyes, and a heart full of dreams, even when the world gave her little to dream about. After her father passed away, everything changed. He had been her only warmth, her only shield. Without him, Lila was left with her stepmother, Marla, a woman who cared only for herself. To Marla, Lila wasn't family, she was a burden, an extra mouth to feed in a house where even one was too many. Marla made it clear. Love was not something Lila would get. While other kids curled up with their parents, hearing bedtime stories, Lila scrubbed dishes, hauled groceries, and slept on a thin mat in the corner. She ate whatever scraps were left, if there were any. But Lila never complained, even with tears in her eyes. She smiled, even with an empty stomach. She whispered, "Thank you." Deep down, she believed someone might one day see her, care for her, and call her their own. But in Eldridge, no one noticed a poor, fatherless girl. Each day, Lila learned a painful truth. In Marla's eyes, she was the stepchild nobody wanted. One scorching morning, as Eldridge baked under a ruthless sun, a stranger rolled into town. His name was Victor, a wealthy businessman from a distant city. He drove a sleek black car that gleamed in the sunlight, and his suitcase was stuffed with cash, gadgets, and secrets. The townsfolk gathered, their eyes wide with curiosity. Victor scanned the crowd with a sharp smile, not looking for a place to stay or a meal, but for something else. He showed up at Marla's doorstep with an offer. "I need a girl," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "Someone young, quiet, obedient, to work in a big city mansion." He slid a thick envelope across the table. It bulged with crisp dollar bills, more money than Marla had ever seen. Marla didn't ask questions. She didn't hesitate. Her eyes locked on the cash like a hawk spotting prey. In that moment, Lila wasn't her late husband's daughter anymore. She wasn't a girl with dreams or a kid who once called her mom. She was a paycheck, a ticket out of poverty. Without a word to Lila, Marla said, "Take her." When Lila heard the news, her heart sank. "Where am I going? What did I do wrong?" she asked, her voice shaking. Marla wouldn't meet her eyes. "You'll have a better life," she muttered coldly. "Be grateful." The next morning, Victor came for her. Lila stood at the edge of town, clutching a small backpack with her father's old jacket inside. No one said goodbye, not even Marla, who was too busy counting her money. As Lila climbed into Victor's car, tears stung her eyes. She'd never left Eldridge before. The air felt heavy, and the road ahead stretched on forever. She glanced back, hoping someone would wave, call her name, say they cared. But the town stayed silent. Her home, her past, her childhood, it all faded as the car sped away. Lila didn't know where she was headed. She didn't know what awaited her. All she knew was she'd been sold, traded for cash like she was worth nothing more. In her heart, something broke, not just from sadness, but from the sharp truth that the one person meant to protect her had let her go without a tear. The journey felt endless. Days blurred into weeks as Lila traveled through dusty highways and sprawling cities. Her small body trembled with hunger and fear. The sun glared through the car windows, and the nights were cold and lonely. She clung to her father's jacket, the only piece of herself she had left. In many ways, it was. Finally, they arrived in Zenith City, a place so grand it seemed plucked from a dream. Skyscrapers gleamed like gold, and the mansion's gates towered over everything. For a moment, Lila wondered if things might get better here. But that hope shattered the second she stepped inside. There was no warm bed, no kind welcome, no promise of a new start. Instead, Lila was shoved into a cramped room filled with girls her age. Some even younger. Their eyes were empty, their clothes tattered. They weren't guests, they were workers. Trapped. And now, so was Lila. She soon learned the truth. Victor hadn't brought her to clean houses or serve meals. She'd been sold into a hidden world, a dark scheme tied to Zenith's elite. The city's powerful needed girls like her, poor, quiet, forgotten, because no one would notice if they vanished. Lila was given a faded uniform and told to stay silent. She scrubbed floors, polished glass she could never afford, and carried heavy boxes until her arms ached. The supervisors snapped if she slowed down. Some smirked when she cried. Her hands blistered, her feet hurt, and still, she was expected to keep going. The worst pain wasn't physical. It was in her heart. She missed her father's laugh, his bedtime stories, the way he made her feel safe. She missed hearing her name spoken with kindness. Here, she was just girl, a number, a shadow in a city of wealth. One night, lying on the cold floor beside the other girls, she whispered, "Why didn't anyone save me?" Her voice broke, but no one answered. They were all too tired, too broken. Zenith City sparkled like a dream from the outside. But for Lila, it was a glittering cage, beautiful yet cruel, rich yet heartless. She'd been sold into a nightmare. And every day reminded her that kindness was rare in a world of money and power. Still, deep inside, a tiny spark flickered. A quiet voice, almost too soft to hear, whispered, "Keep going." And somehow, Lila held on. She believed, even in chains, that her story wasn't over. One evening, as the city's neon lights buzzed and a cool breeze slipped through the mansion's halls, Lila found something unexpected, a friend in the unlikeliest place. While mopping a hallway, an older woman approached her. Her name was Esther, a retired librarian who worked in the mansion's archives. Esther had warm eyes that seemed to see right through Lila's pain. She noticed something no one else had, a gentle spirit that refused to be crushed. Esther started meeting Lila in secret, late at night, in a quiet corner of the library, with the glow of a small flashlight and the rustle of old books. She opened a new world for Lila. She taught her to read, guiding her through each word with patience. "Knowledge is power," Esther said, her voice full of hope. She explained that with learning, Lila could understand the city's secrets, the truth about power, and maybe even find a way to change her life. As weeks passed, Lila's world grew brighter. Reading opened doors to stories of brave leaders, clever inventors, and times when people valued heart over money. Esther taught her about fairness, courage, and the wisdom that comes from understanding life's complexities. Every word on a page became a stepping stone, lifting Lila's spirit above her daily struggles. In their secret meetings, laughter sometimes filled the air. Esther shared funny stories from her years in the city, and Lila's quiet giggles felt like a gift. But there were heavy moments too. As Lila learned, she thought of her lost home, the girl she used to be, and the life stolen by greed. The lessons weren't just about words or facts, they were about reclaiming her worth and dreaming of a better future. Esther's kindness made Lila feel seen, valued, and capable of more than being a silent worker. With every story, every truth explained in simple terms, Lila imagined a day when she could rise above Zenith's glittering cage. In Esther's gentle voice, she began to believe her quiet strength could one day challenge the city's darkest shadows. And so, under the cover of night, guided by one caring soul, Lila's hidden light grew stronger, promising that hope could shine even in the smallest spark. One morning, Zenith City woke to a heavy silence. The mayor was gone. No one knew how it happened. Some said a heart attack. Others whispered sabotage. Fear spread like wildfire. Workers moved quietly. Officials argued in private. And the city, once bold and bright, teetered on the edge of chaos. Lila heard the news while carrying a stack of files. She froze, her heart racing. The mayor, though distant, had been the face of power. Her sudden death shook the city and stirred something in Lila's soul. Something was changing, something big. Soon, whispers filled the air. Talk of old families, forgotten heirs, a leadership role that might belong to someone unexpected. In the midst of this, Lila found a hidden letter tucked inside an old book Esther had shown her. The paper was worn, but the words were clear and sharp. It was from a woman named Clara, once a leader in Zenith, writing to her daughter, who'd been forced out during a power struggle. That daughter had fled, started a new life, and had a child, Clara's grandchild, far from the city's reach. Lila's hands shook as she read the name at the bottom. Her mother's name. Could it be true? Was she the granddaughter of a city leader? Could she carry the blood of someone great, even after all she'd endured? She ran to Esther, the letter clutched tight, tears in her eyes. Esther read it slowly, then looked at Lila with awe. "It's you," she whispered. "They tried to erase your story. But fate remembers." Esther explained what she knew. Years ago, powerful people had feared Clara's influence. They forced out her daughter and hid every trace of her family. But truth doesn't stay buried. Now, with the city leaderless, fate had brought Lila back to the heart of the place she was born to lead. The pain of her past, Marla's cruelty, Zenith's chains, it all clicked. She hadn't been sold by chance. She'd been drawn back by destiny. Lila stood on a balcony, the letter pressed to her chest, her heart pounding with fear and hope. For the first time, she didn't feel small, she didn't feel forgotten, she felt chosen. And she knew her story was just beginning. The city square was packed. Officials in sharp suits, security in crisp uniforms, and curious onlookers filled every inch. The mayor's seat was empty, surrounded by tension and doubt. No one knew who would step up. Everyone watched, waited, wondered. Then a girl in a plain gray uniform walked into the spotlight. Lila. Some frowned, confused. Others snickered. "Isn't that one of the workers?" someone muttered. "She's lost," another laughed. But Lila kept walking, her heart thumping so loud it drowned out the noise. She stood in the center of the crowd and spoke, her voice shaky but clear. "I am Lila, daughter of Nora, granddaughter of Clara. My blood belongs to this city." The laughter grew. People pointed, some turned away in disgust. A worker claiming leadership? It was ridiculous. Impossible. The city council smirked. One mocked her voice. But Lila stood tall. This time, she wasn't afraid. She carried the truth, and she had proof. From her pocket, she pulled a small velvet pouch. Inside was a silver locket, shaped like a star, with a faint city emblem engraved on it. Esther had helped her find it, hidden in a box left by her mother. It had belonged to Clara herself. Then she unfolded the old letter, the one with her mother's name and Clara's handwriting. The city seal, though faded, was still there. She handed both to the council, her hands trembling. The crowd grew quiet. The officials leaned in, reading every word. Their eyes widened. Whispers spread. Doubt turned to curiosity. An older historian examined the locket, comparing it to city records. He gasped. "This is real," he said softly. "This locket was lost decades ago." Silence swept the square. An elder woman stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "We tried to forget Clara," she said. "We erased her story out of fear. But this girl brings it back with truth and courage." The laughter stopped. Eyes followed Lila, not with pity, but with respect. She stood taller than ever, her head high, her hands steady. She'd walked in as a worker, but she'd spoken like a leader. For the first time, people saw her not as a girl from nowhere, but as a spark that had survived every hardship. She wasn't asking for power. She was showing them it was already hers. Lila's rise didn't come with cheers or a title. It came with courage, raw, trembling, beautiful courage. That day, her voice, once ignored, ignited hope in a city that had forgotten what true leadership looked like. The council didn't hand Lila the mayor's seat right away. They believed in proof, not just blood. So they set a final challenge to decide who deserved to lead. The task: bring peace to 3 rival community groups in Zenith. Groups who'd clashed for years, causing pain and division. No leader had united them. If Lila could, the city would be hers. People whispered she'd fail. "She's just a girl," they said. "She's never led a team or spoken in public." But Lila didn't need flashy speeches or authority. She had something stronger, a heart that listened and a mind that thought like a leader. She started her journey alone. No security, no wealth, just herself and the truth. The first group, the River Collective, lived by the waterfront and blamed others for polluting their resources. The second, the Hill Alliance, controlled the highlands and refused to share space. The third, the Desert Crew, were fierce advocates who'd lost much to conflict and trusted no one. Lila met with their leaders. She listened more than she spoke. She heard their anger, their pain, their fears. She didn't act like a politician. She spoke like someone who'd known struggle. Like one of them. Slowly, they began to trust her. She found small ways to connect them. She helped the River Collective access clean water through a community project. She convinced the Hill Alliance to share their land for a shared garden. She worked with the desert crew to honor their losses with a public memorial. Her actions were simple but honest. She didn't promise miracles, she showed results. Day by day, the group started talking, not fighting. They saw Lila not as a stranger, but as a bridge between them. When she brought their leaders together for a meeting, they didn't shout, they listened. And for the first time in years, they agreed to work together. The council watched, stunned. The city buzzed with stories of the girl who'd done the impossible. Lila returned to the square, not with pride, but with quiet strength. She'd passed the test. The elder woman from the council stepped forward. "You've shown what leadership means," she said. "Not power, but care. Not force, but unity." The crowd cheered, not out of duty, but from their hearts. Lila didn't smile. She didn't need to. She felt something deeper, peace. She'd come to Zenith as a girl sold for cash, but she stood now as a leader chosen by truth. The city wasn't perfect. The scars of the past remained. But with Lila's voice guiding them, Zenith began to heal. Her story wasn't over. It was a new beginning. Not just for her, but for a city learning to value heart over gold.